failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
How do you feel about Vader's presentation in this movie?
10 out of 10. Love it.
I wouldn't go that far. The voice is absolutely 10 out of 10, but I've always taken issue with this movie more than the others with his physical acting. Like, I felt like he was waving his arms around too much a lot of the time. And like David Prowse was trying to overact in the suit, and that came across sometimes. Like when he's talking to Leia, like the finger in the face. Like sometimes it worked, like when he said, "Take her away," like that was fine, the waving of the arm. But the rest of the time, even when he's talking to Tarkin, he's just always moving his hands in this way. In the later ones, like Empire, he's usually just kind of statue like when he's talking or whatnot, or actually doing something. But yeah,
would you think that was because they had a hard time hearing the actor through the helmet, so he had to do a lot of emoting with his hands to signal?
It's possible, but in the behind the scenes with David's voice, it is David Prowse, isn't it? Or am I thinking of the Boba Fett actor?
Way up here, I don't even know.
Well, whoever's in the actual suit, in the behind the scenes footage, I mean, you can hear him pretty clearly before they overlaid his voice. It is definitely possible, but I felt like it was just him, like how actors nowadays say it's impossible to act with a mask on, which is wrong, but that's why they keep taking their masks off, like in The Mandalorian and whatnot. And so that might have been David's reaction to it, is overacting. And that's always bothered me in this one specifically.
Valid
it wasn't
point.
an issue in the rest of them, but yeah, it would always take me out of his mysticism, his just stalwart nature, to have him waving his arms around. Like he always seemed like he was going to be in control of his body, make a move.
That never registered on me. But when I consider like a villain, he's the bad guy. Was I afraid of him? When I heard the music and I knew that they were going to have a Darth Vader scene, was I like, feeling nervous? Yeah, he sold me. I was really worried about what was going to happen.
Definitely did that. And for me, most of that was his mask and his voice. So those two aspects of it are 100% 10 out of 10. But
there's that running joke, where you just keep strangling people and replacing them, and
very much within his character.
Find the rebels' hidden fort.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's also interesting in that scene you just showed us there that he wasn't in charge.
No, well, that's where I was going to go with this, is that, and again, I'm breaking the rule. We're going to slip into the other movies because I can't explain my own opinion of this without that, is that as intimidating as Vader is, I didn't get the uber nature of him until Empire, because at this point, remember right here, A New Hope is where the Empire comes to you. That scene, and that is the very scene where you understand how powerful the Empire is, because the Emperor has just dissolved the Senate, and that means the local governors, or as we know them, Moffs, as they later are completely given the term there, they are then given full control of the different sectors of the Empire. And right there weren't that many. Grand Moff Tarkin, he is at the top of the political food chain.
Very much so, yeah.
And therefore, from a political power moment right there, considering that then the individual Moffs are then the strongest political power base in the Empire after Palpatine, who, by the way, remember, if we go by 4, 5, 6 knowledge, nobody knows he's a Sith Lord. Nobody knows he's a Force user. He's just Palpatine, who rose to power. He's the Emperor. He's the Emperor. They don't know that the Force is behind him. Only Vader knows, or maybe a couple others might know, who are really on the inner circle.
Yeah.
So the Moffs are they are the most powerful across the Empire at that moment, that very moment. So if Tarkin is a Grand Moff, and I would say I would say you probably count on one hand then how many Grand Moffs there are. He is the highest ranking military officer on the Death Star. And Vader, even though he serves as the Emperor's man, he's just known as Lord Vader. He has no official rank in A New Hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's outside.
Everybody knows he used to be a Jedi because they make fun of him for that. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
You'll never. You have technological terror.
No.
Okay. Don't have so much faith. I didn't have time to make that clip. Do not have so much faith in this technological terror you've destructed. It is insignificant to the power of the Fourth. I know that's not exact, but it's the general. Right. It's a general quote. It's insignificant compared to the power of the Force. Vader, at this point in A New Hope, doesn't have an official place in the Imperial hierarchy, especially not in the military. But when you get to Empire, he is essentially second in command at this point. He is the Emperor's voice. His ship is a super Star Destroyer, the Executor, the flagship of the Imperial Navy. Mm-hmm. It is that is the significance of where he is at that point. He is in command of the fleet. He is telling admirals what to do. At this point, we have no idea that Grand Admirals exist. So we don't know if a Grand Admiral would have any sort of ability to command Vader, but only the Emperor can command Vader by Empire Strikes Back. But in A New Hope, Tarkin can command Vader because he is, I don't know, maybe Tarkin was the only Grand Moff at the time. I'd have to do a bit of a nerd deep dive on that. But based on movie knowledge on hand, Tarkin is clearly the top-ranking officer, and Vader he's clearly not in the chain of command. Tarkin's in command of the Death Star, therefore Vader is at his command. Until it was a battle situation, and Vader's then issuing commands, send out the fighters, you come with me. We're going out to patrol the trenches. So Tarkin understood. I think Tarkin is well aware that the Emperor is a Sith Lord. He's well aware. And he knows Vader, and we're talking outside the Clone Wars. We're not talking about the Clone Wars.
I don't know, because there was no real reason for the Emperor ever to show his power. He would just say.
Well, I think Tarkin would be high up enough in the inner circle that he would know.
Yeah,
that Palpatine.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Strongly suspect. I would agree with you there, but the Emperor is not calling his wine cup from across the room and doing that kind of a thing.
If you take in now, and if we expand our evidence,
common sense would say yes, right? Because you know Darth Vader can use the Force, and you know that Darth Vader was probably sent by the Emperor, so that you would just kind of put two and two together and say, okay, I know the system, I know the Sith and the
I don't think
the rule
Tarkin was Vader respected Tarkin. If you use Clone Wars and prequel evidence as part of the argument, Vader had a lot of respect for Tarkin. He had a great deal of respect for Tarkin as a commander, as a political maneuver.
But with the inclusion of the prequels and the Clone Wars, it doesn't make sense for Tarkin to be above them, because even at the end of Revenge of the Sith, he's shown as subservient to both of them. And Anakin was a commanding officer in the Clone Wars, though.
Well,
Anakin
he was a general. He was a General Skywalker.
Right. So even as one of hundreds of Jedis, that's already higher on the ladder.
I think in that final scene of Revenge of the Sith, I think that's more of being subservient to Palpatine than to Vader in that moment. That's because Palpatine's right there. Yeah. But I think that he did say Vader release him. He says Vader release him. After
release him
as you wish.
As you wish.
And I think the prequels and the Clone Wars did damage Tarkin's intimidation factor by making him subservient, or at least in my opinion.
I agree. You didn't need that. Yeah.
I think their ranking was changed after Star Wars. Of course, Tarkin was killed when the Death Star blew up.
Right.
Was he not? So.
Yeah. Well, the way that I've heard Vader described in A New Hope is Mad Dog on a leash. And I think that kind of evolved in Empire Strikes Back. And it would make sense in that context if he was just the Mad Dog and Moff was his handler.
Well, that's
like
why
a loaded weapon.
That's why I say that in A New Hope, it's for me, it was always a little subdued. I didn't feel I appreciated him on screen, like, oh, this guy's really cool looking. I like his menacing feature, but then in Empire, then you get the full Vader experience. And at that point, it's been a couple of years since the destruction of the Death Star 1. Vader clearly has, as I said, he is in command of the Imperial fleet. He can order admirals around. He can promote. He can field promotions.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He also seemed to be in charge of Princess Leia's interrogation.
Yeah.
And Darth Vader's like, I'm going to do enough with your nonsense. I'm taking over this and this. And I'm going to do it my way.
He tortures the hell out of her.
Right. But my point is, he asserted his authority. Like, it was like, we're going to go this way. And then Vader's like, this isn't working. We're going to go my way now. And so he
started torturing initially, and that was before Tarkin showed up. Once Tarkin showed up, he said, hey, we're going to blow up her planet and make her talk.
Yeah, he said she's more resistant to the mind probe, which, of course, in using knowledge going on, of course, she has inner force strength naturally, so that would make her resistant. But, yeah, I mean, you would, if we go into EU territory, Thrawn was equal command, but there were only 9 Grand Admirals in Imperial history, and they were all kept on a list that only Palpatine had. And Thrawn was the most secret of them all in order to keep the secret of the Chiss, but that's a whole other story. Excuse me. But I would say that for me, the Vader became more intimidating in Empire. Because, like you said, suddenly, to use the analogy, I wouldn't call him a mad dog on a leash, because to me, Vader, he was calculating, he was patient. I mean, the whole patience of tracking everybody to Cloud City. I mean, remember, again, we're jumping movies. I know when
he did have a rather short fuse though, because
he does a short fuse,
pissing him off.
But that's part of his. That's Anakin. Anakin always had a short fuse. If we go further out, that is still within character. Anakin was not cool and collected, and he was a great strategist and a great warrior and a great field general, but Anakin always had a short fuse. So that's within character, in bringing everything back into play. And I think at that point, when he's making Empire, George knew what Anakin was prior to Vader. I would wager George had written out enough of his own personal notes of what Anakin was like, and I would wager then saying that George knew that Anakin had a short fuse, which is one of the reasons he went dark side, because he had a short fuse. He didn't want to do it slow, do it easy. And therefore, but he was still smart. He's still brilliant. Like I was saying, in Empire, that's a well-laid trap in Bespin. It's a well-laid trap that Han and Leia and Chewie walk right into in Bespin. And because when we do Empire as a review,
we would be honored if you would join us.
I always wanted to see that dinner.
How awkward that would be.
I always wanted to see that dinner.
Does he take off his helmet and eat anything? No. Or is he sipping through it like Spaceballs, drinking coffee through the thing?
But that scene, and that's like, he's just sitting there waiting. And that is also, I believe, and again, this goes back to the argument of flushing out the force powers, that George started to flush it out more. Now, remember, of course, you could say you can counter what I'm going to say. The fact that Vader stopping blaster bolts with his hand. Yeah, it's a cybernetic hand, but there's a little force in that, because it would have blown, if the blasters had just been a cybernetic hand, it would have blown his hand apart.
Yeah.
It wasn't armor. It was a glove. It wasn't armor. It was a glove. So that moment, that's the moment of, damn, he's stopping blaster bolts with his one hand and yanking the blaster out with the other. And I love that scene. That is one of my favorite scenes in The Empire Strikes Back, is just the trap is sprung, as I like to think of it. And
well, Kylo Ren stopped a bullet in mid-air.
Shut up.
Oh, if we're gonna go off that, I would say that I am one of the few people that actually enjoyed Rogue One.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know. But I actually enjoyed it, and I actually enjoyed the Darth Vader scene when he comes on, and I thought, yeah,
but then it doesn't.
That's my Vader.
It doesn't translate to New Hope. That's the problem.
Yeah, the transition isn't great.
It's like, where are the Force powers in New Hope? Because George didn't think of it yet. That's why. That's always my answer.
That, and they were investigating the ship like as if they knew the planes were there, but it was still kind of like not 100%. Vader saw the ship fly away from Scarif, then he wouldn't be even questioning whether or not the planes are in there. So there's that even.
Yeah.
Tear the ship apart. See, I wanted to talk about Vader because Vader only gets better as the movies go on. Mm-hmm. It's a great starting point in New Hope because we establish his strength and his power and his intimidation. I mean, in the first scene where he's lifting the guy up, that's a combination. I think it's a combination force, but also it's a cybernetic arm, so it's stronger than normal. So you can just lift him right up, and he's just David Prowse being 6'7", just holding the dude, or 6'5", 6'7", I forget, just holding the dude. You get the intimidation factor, but then you get the commander in Empire Strikes Back, and then it takes on the intimidation, and you understand what's going on. And
all my favorite Vader scenes though are in Return of the Jedi, like
the opening scene
with Luke.
The opening scene in Jedi is fantastic. I'm here to put you back on schedule. And the scene you mentioned right there, it is just that little bit of Anakin.
It's too late
now. It's too late for me, my son.
That one is my favorite of the Star Wars movies subjectively. I know it has the most issues, but there's just that end. That last act is just so good for me that it subjectively overcomes all three or both of the other ones.
What's this here? So I just wanted to get in Vader. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me at therennerd@gmail.com. That email's for channel business only, so I check it on a daily basis. Also, you can find me at the Geeks and Gamers forums under @ROAS, and you can find me at Rumble and Odyssey, The Renaissance Nerd. Thank you again. See you next time.